The moment I realized what I'd done, my blood turned to ice. My trembling fingers hovered above my phone screen, desperately trying to unsend a message that had already delivered. But it was too late. The little blue checkmark beside the ultrasound image mocked me, confirming my worst nightmare. He had seen it. I collapsed onto my tiny apartment's worn couch, the springs digging into my thighs as I struggled to breathe. The air felt thick, stale with the scent of microwave dinners and discount air freshener. Outside, rain pelted against my window, the rhythmic tapping a stark contrast to my racing heart. How could I have been so careless? The ultrasound was meant for my sister, Emma, the only person who knew about my pregnancy. Instead, I had sent it to him. A man whose real name I'd only learned months after our encounter. A man whose presence made rooms fall silent. A man who, according to whispers, made people disappear. Luca Valenti. 3 dots appeared on my screen. He was typing. I wanted to throw my phone across the room, but I couldn't look away. My palms slicked with sweat as I waited. That's my child. 3 simple words. No question mark, no confusion. Just absolute certainty that sent chills down my spine. I hadn't seen him in exactly 12 weeks and 3 days. Not since that night when I'd made the biggest mistake of my life, or perhaps the most inevitable one. Now, looking at those 3 words, I realized my life as I knew it was over. My phone screen lit up again, this time with an incoming call. His name flashed across it, and a photo I'd never taken, one of me leaving my apartment building yesterday, appeared above it. My stomach lurched. He'd been watching me. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times, each chime driving my anxiety higher. On the 4th ring, I answered, but said nothing. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken threats and promises. "Open your door, Ellie." His voice was exactly as I remembered it. Deep, accented, soft in a way that made it all the more terrifying. "What?" I whispered, though I'd heard him perfectly. "I'm outside your door. Open it." The line went dead. My legs felt like lead as I crossed my small living room to the entrance. Through the peephole, I saw him, impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than my rent for a year. His dark hair was neatly styled, and his face, with those sharp cheekbones and penetrating eyes, was as handsome as it was dangerous. Behind him stood a broad-shouldered man, eyes constantly scanning the hallway. I considered pretending I wasn't home, but the thought vanished as quickly as it came. Luca wasn't a man you ignored. And now he knew about the baby, his baby. With shaking hands, I unlocked the door but kept the chain latched. I opened it just enough to see his face properly. "How did you find me?" My voice came out steadier than I expected. His dark eyes captured mine, and I watched as they moved down to my stomach, hidden beneath my oversized sweater. "I never lost you, Ellie." Something about the way he said my name, like he owned it, like he owned me, sent a conflicting wave of fear and warmth through my body. "What do you want?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Let me in. We need to talk." "We have nothing to talk about." His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened. "The child you're carrying says otherwise." I should have slammed the door, called the police, done anything other than what I did next. But logic had abandoned me the moment his name appeared on my screen. I closed the door, unlatched the chain, and let the devil into my home. Luca stepped inside, his presence immediately making my apartment feel smaller, shabbier. His bodyguard remained in the hallway, closing the door behind his boss. The scent of his cologne, expensive, subtle notes of sandalwood and something darker, filled the space between us. I backed away until my legs hit the couch. He didn't sit. Instead, he surveyed my apartment with calculating eyes. I saw it through his gaze, the second-hand furniture, the stack of medical textbooks by my desk. Remnants of a dream now on hold. The single dirty mug in the sink. I felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with my body. 12 weeks, he finally said, his eyes returning to mine. "You've known about my child for 12 weeks. And you didn't think to tell me?" "I didn't." I swallowed hard. "I didn't think you'd care." A dangerous smile played at his lips. You thought the head of the Valenti family wouldn't care about his heir? The way he said it sent ice down my spine. I'd known who he was, of course. Not at first, but later, after our night together, when I'd stupidly looked him up, curious about the mysterious man who'd approached me at the restaurant where I worked. The articles I found had painted a clear picture of who Luca Valenti was, what the police suspected but could never prove. I was going to take care of it myself, I lied, wrapping my arms around my middle protectively. His eyes flashed dangerously. That was never an option. It's my body. My choice, I countered, a flare of defiance breaking through my fear. He moved then, closing the distance between us in 2 long strides. I flinched, but he didn't touch me. Instead, he leaned down, his face inches from mine, his breath warm against my cheek. The moment that child was conceived, Ellie, it became mine too. And I protect what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice made my heart race. I should have been outraged, should have told him to leave, but part of me, a small, traitorous part, thrilled at his words. "What do you want from me?" I whispered. He straightened, studying me with those unreadable dark eyes. "Pack a bag. You're coming with me." "What?" "No," I stood up too quickly, a wave of dizziness washing over me. His hand shot out to steady me, gripping my elbow. The touch sent electricity racing up my arm, reminding me of the night when those same hands had explored every inch of my body. "This isn't a request, Ellie. This apartment isn't safe for my child." "Your child," I repeated, anger finally breaking through my fear. "You keep saying that, like you had any part in this beyond one night. You don't know me. You don't get to make decisions for me." A muscle ticked in his jaw. "I know enough. I know you worked double shifts at that restaurant to pay for an apartment that should be condemned. I know you dropped out of medical school when your parents died. I know you have no one except a sister who lives 3 states away." Each word felt like a slap. "Have you been stalking me? I've been looking after what's mine. I am not yours." The words burst out of me. His eyes darkened. "But the child is. And until it's born, that makes you my responsibility too." "I don't need your protection or your charity," I spat, though we both knew it was a lie. My bank account was nearly empty, my rent was overdue, and pregnancy complications had already cost me 2 shifts last week. "This isn't charity," he said coldly. "This is necessity. The man your ex owes money to is not someone you want to cross paths with." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "Ryan Barnes. The man you dated before me. The reason you took the job at the restaurant where we met." His voice was matter-of-fact, as if he were discussing the weather and not tearing apart my carefully constructed walls. "He's in debt to the Moretti family. Deep debt, and they're not as civilized as I am when it comes to collecting. Ryan. I hadn't thought about him in months. We dated briefly last year before I discovered his gambling problem. He'd disappeared from my life so completely, I'd assumed he'd skipped town to escape his creditors. I'd never imagined those creditors were a rival Mafia family. "What does that have to do with me?" I asked, though dread was already pooling in my stomach. "They know about your connection to him. And when they discover your connection to me, and the child you're carrying..." He left the sentence hanging, but his meaning was clear. I sank back onto the couch, my legs unable to support me anymore. "You're lying. You're trying to scare me into doing what you want." Luca pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, and handed it to me. On the screen was a photo of Ryan, looking thinner and more haggard than I remembered, talking to a man outside what appeared to be my workplace. The timestamp showed it was taken yesterday. "He's looking for you," Luca said softly, "and he's desperate enough to sell information about my child to save his own skin." I handed the phone back, my hands trembling. "Even if that's true, I can't just leave with you. I don't know you. You knew me well enough once." Heat rushed to my cheeks at the memory of that night. How his hands had felt on my skin. How his lips had trailed fire down my neck. How I'd surrendered to him completely. One night of weakness after months of loneliness and struggle. "That was different," I whispered. "Was it?" He knelt in front of me, bringing our eyes level. It was an oddly vulnerable position for such a powerful man. "Tell me you felt nothing, Ellie. Tell me you don't remember every moment of that night as clearly as I do." I couldn't lie. Not when he was looking at me like that. It doesn't matter what I felt. It was one night. And now it's a lifetime. His gaze dropped to my stomach again. Our child changes everything. The way he said, our child, sent a confusing mix of emotions through me. Part of me wanted to run as far from this dangerous man as possible. But another part, the part that had been struggling alone for so long, whispered that maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to do this by myself anymore. I can't just disappear, I said, searching for excuses. I have a job, appointments, all taken care of. Of course he'd already arranged it. Men like Luca Valenti didn't ask. They simply made things happen. Your landlord will receive the remainder of your lease payment. Your employer will be informed of your resignation. Your doctor has referred you to a specialist who will see you tomorrow. My mouth fell open. You can't just rearrange my life without my permission. I already have, he replied calmly. The only question is whether you'll come willingly, or if I need to convince you further. There was no threat in his voice, but I didn't miss the steel behind his words. Luca Valenti always got what he wanted. And if I refuse? I challenged, knowing the answer, but needing to hear it. He leaned forward, his face inches from mine. There is no refusing, Ellie. You carry my child. That makes you mine to protect, whether you like it or not. His eyes softened fractionally, but I'd prefer you came willingly. Pack what matters to you. Everything else can be replaced. I stared at him. This man who had turned my world upside down twice now, first with a night I couldn't forget, and now with a future I couldn't escape. Rain continued to lash against my windows, the storm outside matching the turmoil within me. How long? I asked finally. Until it's safe. His non-answer hung between us. And where would we go? My home. You'll have your own space, your own privacy, but you'll be protected. I closed my eyes, considering my options. There were none. Even if I somehow evaded him today, he'd find me. Men like Luca always did, and if what he said about Ryan and the Moretti family was true, I need an hour, I said at last, opening my eyes. He nodded once, satisfaction evident in the slight relaxation of his shoulders. You have 30 minutes. As I stood to pack, his hand caught mine. The touch was gentle but firm, a reminder of the invisible chains now binding us together. Ellie, he said, his voice softer than I'd heard it. I will keep you safe, both of you. That's a promise. In that moment, looking into his dark eyes, I almost believed him, almost trusted that the devil holding my hand was better than the demons waiting outside. I just didn't know if I'd survive either way. I moved through my apartment like a sleepwalker, gathering pieces of my life into a small suitcase. Clothes, toiletries, my prenatal vitamins, the worn photo of my parents I kept by my bedside. Each item felt like a goodbye. Behind me, I could feel Luca's eyes tracking my movements, watchful and assessing. Is this really necessary? I asked, folding a sweater with trembling hands. Couldn't you just, I don't know, assign someone to watch my building? No. The single word held no room for negotiation. The Morettis have eyes everywhere, your building, your workplace, probably your doctor's office by now. A chill ran through me at the thought of being watched, tracked like prey. Why would they care so much about me? I'm nobody. Luca moved closer, his presence immediately dominating the small bedroom. You were connected to a man who owes them money. Now you're connected to me and carrying my child. That makes you very valuable in their eyes. As leverage, as a message, as revenge. I swallowed hard, turning away to hide the fear I knew was written across my face. My hand unconsciously went to my stomach, still mostly flat beneath my sweater. The life growing inside me suddenly felt more real, more vulnerable than ever before. You have 5 more minutes, Luca said, checking his watch. An expensive timepiece that probably cost more than my car. I nodded, moving to the bathroom to gather my remaining necessities. When I returned, Luca was standing by my desk, examining the framed photo of Emma and me from her college graduation. Your sister, he stated, not asked. She lives in Chicago. A fresh wave of anxiety washed over me. Leave her out of this. He placed the frame back exactly where he'd found it. I already have security watching her building. She'll be protected. The casual way he said it, as if assigning men to surveil my sister was nothing, a minor detail already handled, reminded me exactly who I was dealing with. This man commanded an empire built on fear and power. And now, through one careless mistake, I was caught in his web. I zipped my suitcase closed with finality. I'm ready. Luca nodded and reached for my bag, his hand brushing mine. Even that brief contact sent an unwelcome warmth through me. I pulled away quickly, wrapping my arms around myself. My car is waiting, he said, either not noticing or choosing to ignore my reaction. He opened the door, and his bodyguard immediately straightened to attention. Another man, one I hadn't seen before, appeared from the stairwell, tall, with vigilant eyes that scanned me briefly before turning to Luca. The perimeter is clear, boss, he said in a low voice. But there was a car circling the block. Black sedan, tinted windows, Moretti's style. Luca's expression hardened. Time to go. He placed his hand on the small of my back, guiding me toward the stairs. The touch was light but insistent, brooking no argument. I glanced back at my apartment door as we descended the stairs, wondering if I would ever return. The thought sent a pang of loss through me that surprised me with its intensity. This tiny, shabby apartment had been my refuge, my only constant during the hardest years of my life. Now I was leaving it behind for... what? The home of a man I barely knew. A man whose world was as dangerous as he was. Outside, rain still poured from a leaden sky, drumming against the sidewalk. A sleek black SUV with dark windows idled at the curb, its engine a low purr against the storm. The bodyguard moved ahead, opening an umbrella and escorting us to the vehicle while his companion scanned the street with predatory focus. The interior of the SUV was all soft leather and subdued luxury. I slid across the seat, and Luca followed, closing the door behind him. The privacy barrier between us and the driver was already raised. As the car pulled away from the curb, I watched my building recede through the rain-streaked window, my throat tightened with unexpected emotion. Where exactly are we going? I finally asked, breaking the heavy silence. My estate, Luca replied. North of the city, it's secure, private. How long do you expect me to stay there? He turned to face me, his dark eyes unreadable. Until the child is born. After that, we'll discuss options. Options, I echoed hollowly. Do I have any now? A faint smile, more predatory than amused, touched his lips. You always have choices, Ellie. They just might not be the ones you want. I turned back to the window, watching the city pass by in a blur of rain and lights. What about my life? My job? My friends? Your job barely covered your rent, he said dismissively. As for friends, he paused, and I knew he was right. I'd isolated myself after my parents died, working double shifts and falling into bed exhausted, barely maintaining connections. You can contact anyone you need to. Tell them you've taken a private nursing position if you like, something that explains your absence. I shook my head, anger flaring through my fear. You've thought of everything, haven't you? It's my job to think of everything, to anticipate threats, eliminate vulnerabilities, and that's what I am. A vulnerability? His eyes traveled over my face, down to where my hand rested protectively on my stomach. You're carrying my child. That makes you both my greatest vulnerability and my greatest responsibility. The way he said it sent a confusing ripple of emotion through me. There was possession in his tone, yes, but also something else. A fierceness that bordered on devotion. It was unsettling coming from a man like him. Tell me about the night we met, I said suddenly, needing to change the subject, to regain some sense of control. Why did you approach me? Was it random, or did you know who I was? Luca studied me for a long moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. Nothing in my life happens randomly, Ellie. My blood ran cold. What does that mean? It means I knew who you were before I ever spoke to you. I knew you worked double shifts at a restaurant far below your capabilities. I knew you'd been in medical school before dropping out. I knew about Ryan Barnes and his connection to the Morettis. Each word felt like a blow. You targeted me? I was interested in you, he corrected smoothly. There's a difference. Not to me, I whispered, feeling sick. So what? That whole night was just… what? You manipulating me? Playing some game? Anger flashed in his eyes. What happened between us was real. I wanted you from the moment I saw you. Everything else came second. I don't believe you, I said, though part of me desperately wanted to. The night I'd spent with Luca had been the first time in years I'd felt truly alive, desired, seen. The thought that it had all been calculated made me feel hollow. He moved closer, the leather seat creaking beneath him. Look at me, Ellie. Against my better judgment, I did. His eyes captured mine, dark and intense. I did know who you were. I was aware of your connection to Barnes. But what happened between us had nothing to do with that. His voice dropped lower. When I touched you, when I kissed you, when I took you to my bed, that was about us. Only us. The memory of his hands on my skin, his lips against my neck, made heat bloom in my cheeks. I looked away, unable to hold his gaze. It doesn't matter now, I said, though we both knew it did. We're here because of the baby, nothing else. Are we? He challenged softly. Before I could respond, the car slowed, turning through an imposing iron gate set into a high stone wall. Beyond it, a winding driveway cut through immaculate grounds, leading to a sprawling estate that looked like it belonged in another century. The mansion was stone and glass, elegant and imposing against the stormy sky. We're here, Luca said unnecessarily, watching my reaction. I stared at the house. No, not a house, a fortress, feeling another wave of unreality wash over me. This was his world, a world of wealth and power I could scarcely comprehend. The car stopped at the front entrance, where a covered portico protected from the rain. Immediately, the driver appeared to open Luca's door, while another man, presumably more security, opened mine. Luca's hand found the small of my back again, as he guided me up the wide stone steps to the massive front door, which opened before we reached it. A middle-aged woman with a kind face but watchful eyes stood in the doorway. Mrs. Russo, Luca greeted her. This is Ellie Parker. She'll be staying with us indefinitely. The woman's eyes traveled to my stomach briefly before returning to my face with a warm smile. Welcome, Miss Parker. I've prepared the East Wing suite for you. Thank you, I murmured, feeling overwhelmed. Mrs. Russo oversees the household, Luca explained. Anything you need, she can provide or arrange. The foyer we stepped into was cavernous, with a sweeping staircase and marble floors that echoed with our footsteps. Art that looked museum-worthy hung on the walls, and a massive crystal chandelier cast rainbows of light across the space. It was beautiful, intimidating, and nothing like anywhere I'd ever lived. I'll show Miss Parker to her rooms, Mrs. Russo offered, but Luca shook his head. I'll take her. Have dinner prepared in my study in 1 hour. We'll eat privately tonight. The woman nodded and disappeared down a hallway, leaving me alone with Luca once more. This way, he said, guiding me up the staircase. Your suite connects to mine, but you'll have complete privacy, your own entrance, sitting room, bedroom, and bath. Connected to yours? I echoed, alarmed. He glanced at me, a hint of that predatory smile returning. For security purposes, the connecting door locks from both sides. We reached the top of the stairs and proceeded down a long corridor lined with more artwork and antique furniture. Finally, Luca stopped at a set of double doors, which he opened to reveal a suite that was larger than my entire apartment. The sitting room was elegant without being ostentatious. Plush cream carpets, a comfortable-looking sofa in soft blue, a marble fireplace with a fire already crackling inside. Beyond, I could see a glimpse of a bedroom with a massive 4-poster bed. Is this adequate? Luca asked, and I detected a rare note of uncertainty in his voice. I nodded, unable to form words. The luxury surrounding me was so far removed from my daily existence that it felt like I'd stepped into another world. Your bathroom is through there, he continued, pointing to a door on the right. The closet has been stocked with some essentials, but we can have anything else you need delivered. Stocked? I found my voice. You already bought me clothes. Mrs. Russo did. I gave her your sizes. At my look of alarm, he added, Your medical records provided the information. Nothing invasive. Nothing invasive. As if kidnapping me from my life, researching my background, and installing me in his home like a prized possession wasn't invasive enough. The connecting door is here, he said, moving to a discreet door built into the far wall. As I said, it locks from both sides. He demonstrated the heavy bolt on my side. My suite is beyond it. If you need me for any reason, at any hour, you only need to knock. The implication in his words made my heart rate accelerate. I moved away from the door, putting distance between us. I'd like to rest now, I said, suddenly desperate to be alone, to process everything that had happened in the last few hours. Luca studied me for a long moment, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. Of course. Pregnancy is exhausting, especially in the first trimester. Rest, we'll talk more over dinner. He moved toward the main door, then paused. Ellie. I looked up, finding his eyes intent on mine. I know this isn't what you wanted, but I promise you'll be safe here. Both of you. His gaze dropped briefly to my stomach. And in time, I hope you'll come to see that this arrangement benefits us both. With that cryptic statement, he left, closing the door softly behind him. Alone at last, I sank onto the edge of the bed, burying my face in my hands. Tears I'd been holding back all day finally spilled free, hot and desperate. What had I done? How had one careless text message led to this, being essentially held captive by one of the most dangerous men in the country? A man who had gotten me pregnant in a single night of weakness, a man who claimed to want to protect me but had turned my life upside down without a second thought. I don't know how long I sat there crying, but eventually the tears subsided, leaving me hollow and exhausted. The soft ticking of an antique clock on the mantelpiece counted away seconds of my new reality. I forced myself to breathe deeply, to think. I was trapped, yes, but not in immediate danger, at least not from Luca. If what he said about the Morettis was true, I might even be safer here than in my apartment. The thought provided little comfort. Rising from the bed, I explored my new prison. The bathroom was a marvel of marble and glass, with a soaking tub large enough to swim in, and a shower with more settings than I knew what to do with. The walk-in closet was even more unsettling. Rows of clothes in my size, tags still attached, casual wear, maternity clothes for later stages, even nightgowns and underwear. All expensive brands I'd never have bought for myself. The precision of it all, the way Luca had anticipated and prepared for my arrival, sent another chill through me. How long had he been planning this? Had he just been waiting for an opportunity? An excuse to bring me into his world? I returned to the sitting room and tried the main door. It wasn't locked. That surprised me, though it probably shouldn't have. Where would I go? I had no car, no money, and according to Luca, people looking for me who meant me harm. The open door wasn't freedom. It was the illusion of choice. Still, I stepped into the hallway, needing to understand the layout of my new home? Prison? I wasn't sure what to call it yet. The corridor was silent and empty. The only sound my own soft footsteps on the plush carpet. I moved away from where Luca had led me, turning corners and passing closed doors, until I found a window overlooking the grounds. Rain still fell, casting a gray veil over immaculately landscaped gardens, a reflecting pool, and beyond that, dense woods that seemed to encircle the property. In the distance, I could make out what looked like a guardhouse near the gate we'd entered through. "Miss Parker?" I jumped at the voice, turning to find Mrs. Russo watching me with a mixture of concern and wariness. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I was just looking around." Her expression softened. "No need to apologize. This is your home now, after all." She gestured down the hallway. "Would you like a proper tour later, after you've rested?" Home. The word felt wrong. Foreign. "Maybe tomorrow," I said. "I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed today." She nodded understandingly. "Of course. Pregnancy is taxing enough without—" She trailed off, perhaps realizing she was treading into sensitive territory. "Dinner will be served in Mr. Valenti's study in 30 minutes. Would you like me to show you the way when it's time?" I nodded, relieved not to have to find it myself. "Thank you." Back in my suite, I took a quick shower, needing to wash away the stress of the day. The hot water soothed my tense muscles, but did little for my racing mind. Afterwards, I stood before the closet, facing rows of clothes that belonged to me but weren't mine. Eventually, I selected a simple blue dress, soft and comfortable without being too casual. As I dressed, my hand lingered on my stomach. "I'm sorry," I whispered to the tiny life inside me. "I'm sorry I got us into this mess." A gentle knock at the door announced Mrs. Russo, who led me through the labyrinth of corridors to Luca's study. The room was large but surprisingly cozy, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather furnishings, and another crackling fire. A small table had been set near the fireplace, intimate and elegant. Luca rose when I entered, his eyes moving over me with quiet appreciation. He'd changed into more casual clothing, dark slacks and a gray cashmere sweater that somehow made him look even more dangerous in its understated elegance. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "The dress isn't mine," I replied, unable to keep the edge from my voice. A faint smile touched his lips. "It is now." Mrs. Russo discreetly left, closing the door behind her. Luca pulled out my chair, and I sat, hyper-aware of his proximity as he moved to his own seat across from me. A bottle of mineral water and wine sat on the table. He poured water for me without asking. "I've arranged for the top prenatal specialist in the state to see you tomorrow," he said, as a young man entered silently with our first course. "Dr. Winters, she's very discreet." I stared down at the delicate soup before me. "I already have a doctor, a general practitioner who sees 50 patients a day," Luca countered. "Dr. Winters specializes in high-risk pregnancies." I looked up sharply. "Is my pregnancy high risk?" "All pregnancies involving my family are high risk by default," he said, a hardness entering his voice. "The Morettis aren't the only ones who would use my child as leverage." The casual way he referenced the violence of his world made my appetite vanish. I pushed the soup away, untouched. "You need to eat," Luca said, his tone gentler. "For the baby." "Don't." I closed my eyes briefly. "Don't use the baby to manipulate me." "I'm not manipulating you. I'm stating medical fact. Proper nutrition is essential during pregnancy, especially the first trimester." I knew he was right, which only irritated me more. Reluctantly, I picked up my spoon and began to eat. The soup was delicious, of course. "Tell me about your sister," Luca said after a moment, clearly changing tactics. I hesitated, wary of discussing Emma with him. "Why?" "Because she's important to you, and what's important to you matters to me now." I set down my spoon, studying his face for signs of deception. Finding none, I said, "Emma is 26. She's a research scientist in Chicago, working on climate change models. She's brilliant, stubborn, and the only family I have left. You're close?" I nodded. "After our parents died, she wanted me to move to Chicago with her. But I'd just started medical school here. I was too stubborn to leave." A bitter smile touched my lips. Not that it mattered in the end. I had to drop out anyway when the money ran out. "You could go back," Luca said, surprising me, "after the baby is born, if you wanted to." I stared at him. "What?" "Medical school. You could finish your degree. I'd make the arrangements, cover the costs." For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine it, completing the dream I'd abandoned, becoming the doctor I'd always wanted to be. Then reality crashed back. "And the baby?" I asked. "Would be with you, of course. With us. Us." The word hung in the air between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to face. The server returned, removing our soup bowls and replacing them with the main course, perfectly cooked salmon with roasted vegetables. Again, I felt the surreal contrast between this meal and what I would have been eating in my apartment tonight, probably microwaved ramen or a cheap frozen dinner. "What do you want from me, Luca?" I finally asked, setting down my fork. "Really?" "Beyond ensuring the baby's safety." He considered me for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. "I want you to be comfortable here, to feel secure. Eventually, perhaps, to feel at home. This isn't my home. It's a cage, no matter how gilded." His jaw tightened fractionally. "You're not a prisoner, Ellie. Then I can leave?" Walk out the front door right now? And go where? He challenged. Back to your apartment where the Morettis are watching? To your sister, endangering her life as well? Tell me where you'd go that would be safer for my child than here, under my protection. I had no answer, which he knew perfectly well. The frustration must have shown on my face, because his expression softened. I'm not your enemy, he said quietly. Then what are you? My kidnapper? My jailer? I paused, the word bitter on my tongue. My lover? Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. I'm the father of your child. Beyond that, it's up to you. Nothing about this is up to me, I countered. You've orchestrated everything. My leaving, my staying here, even my doctor's appointments. For your protection. So you keep saying. We fell into tense silence, the only sounds the crackling of the fire and the soft clink of silverware against china. I forced myself to eat, if only to avoid conversation. Finally, Luca spoke again. I know you resent being here. That's understandable. But I hope in time you'll see that I'm doing what's necessary. Necessary for whom? I asked. For all of us. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. The world I live in is dangerous, Ellie. I won't apologize for that. But I can promise you that within these walls, you and our child will want for nothing. You'll be safe, comfortable, protected. A golden cage is still a cage, I murmured. Then consider it a sanctuary instead, he countered. A place apart from the dangers outside. I looked up, meeting his eyes. And what about the danger inside? You. For the first time, he seemed genuinely taken aback. You think I would hurt you? I think you already have, I said softly. You've taken my freedom, my choice. You've decided my life for me without my consent. He was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, touched with something that might have been regret in another man. There are many kinds of freedom, Ellie. Many kinds of choice. Some are illusions. What does that mean? It means the freedom you think you had. Struggling alone, working yourself to exhaustion, barely surviving, was no freedom at all. It was just a different kind of cage. His words hit closer to home than I wanted to admit. The past 2 years had been a constant battle to stay afloat, to hold on to the fragments of the life I'd planned before my parents' death shattered everything. There had been little true freedom in it. At least it was my cage, I said. But the argument sounded hollow even to my own ears. Luca didn't press his advantage, which surprised me. Instead, he changed the subject. Tell me about your pregnancy. How have you been feeling? The mundane question after our tense exchange caught me off guard. Morning sickness mostly, though it lasts all day sometimes. Fatigue. The usual, I guess. Have you had an ultrasound yet? I nodded. Just the one you saw. Last week. Is everything normal? There was genuine concern in his voice, a vulnerability I hadn't expected. As far as they could tell, it's still early. He nodded, seeming relieved. Dr. Winters will do another tomorrow. More comprehensive. Dessert arrived. Some kind of delicate chocolate confection that under other circumstances would have been irresistible. Now, it just reminded me of the bizarre luxury of my captivity. May I ask you something? I said suddenly. Luca looked up, surprised, of course. That night, when we met, was any of it real? Or was I just a conquest, part of some game with the Morettis? His expression darkened. I told you in the car. What happened between us had nothing to do with them. But you knew who I was. You'd researched me. He set down his fork, giving me his full attention. Yes. I knew who you were. Ryan Barnes had been in my club the week before, drunk, talking too much about the Moretti debt, and a beautiful ex-girlfriend who worked at Bellini's. It caught my attention. I had you looked into, out of caution. And then you just happened to show up at my restaurant? I went there to assess whether you were a threat or a potential asset, he admitted, his honesty surprising me. But the moment I saw you, he paused, something shifting in his gaze. Plans change, Ellie. What I intended and what happened are very different things. So you're saying what? That you saw me and fell instantly in lust? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. A dangerous smile played at his lips. Something like that. I remembered that night all too well, how he'd appeared at my section, requesting me specifically as his server, how his eyes had followed me throughout the evening, how he'd left an obscene tip and a card with his private number, how I'd stared at that card for 3 days before finally calling him, drawn to him despite knowing better. "I shouldn't have called you," I said, more to myself than to him. "But you did." There was no triumph in his voice, just simple acknowledgement of fact. And here we are. Here we are indeed, sitting in his mansion, carrying his child, my life now irrevocably entangled with his. "It's getting late," I said, suddenly exhausted by the emotional toll of the day. "I'd like to go back to my room," Luca nodded, rising immediately. "I'll walk you." "I can find my way," I said quickly, not wanting to spend another moment in his unsettling presence. He studied me for a beat, then inclined his head. "As you wish. Sleep well, Ellie." I stood, but before I could turn to leave, his hand caught mine. The touch was light, almost gentle, but it sent electricity racing up my arm. An unwelcome reminder of the chemistry that had led to this mess in the first place. "One day," he said softly, "you'll understand that everything I've done has been to protect what's mine, including you." I pulled my hand away. "I'm not yours." His eyes held mine, intense and knowing. "Aren't you?" I didn't dignify his question with an answer. Instead, I turned and walked away, my heart pounding against my ribs. The worst part wasn't his arrogance or his presumption. It was the tiny, traitorous part of me that responded to his possessiveness, that thrilled at being claimed by such a powerful man. I hated that part of myself. The mansion was quiet as I made my way back to my suite, guided more by instinct than memory. A few wrong turns later, I found myself in an unfamiliar wing, the decor subtly different, darker woods, more masculine furnishings. I was about to turn back when a door opened ahead of me, and a man emerged. The same bodyguard who had been outside my apartment earlier. He froze when he saw me, then quickly composed his features. "Miss Parker, are you lost?" "I'm trying to find my way back to my room," I admitted. "You're in the security wing," he explained. "Your suite is on the other side of the house." His expression gave away nothing, but I sensed disapproval. "I'll escort you." "Thank you." I trailed off, realizing I didn't know his name. "Marco," he supplied after a slight hesitation. "Thank you, Marco." We walked in silence, his presence a few steps behind me, both protective and monitoring. When we reached my door, he nodded once and turned to leave. "Wait," I called after him. "How long have you worked for Luca?" Marco's face remained impassive. 10 years, miss." "And in all that time, has he ever brought someone here, like me?" A flicker of something, surprise, perhaps, crossed his features. "No, miss. Never." Without another word, he disappeared down the hallway, leaving me with that small, unsettling revelation. I was the first woman Luca had brought to his home. I wasn't sure if that made things better or worse. Inside my suite, I changed into a silk nightgown that had been laid out on the bed, another item I hadn't chosen but now apparently owned. The fabric felt like water against my skin, too sensual for my current circumstances. I wrapped a robe around myself, cinching it tightly at the waist. Sleep evaded me. I lay in the enormous bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through the day's events. Just this morning, I'd been in my own apartment, my own life. Now I was here, a captive in a gilded cage, carrying the child of one of the most dangerous men in the country. A child. The reality of it still seemed surreal. I placed my hand on my stomach, trying to connect with the tiny life growing inside me. What kind of world would this baby be born into? What kind of father would Luca Valenti be? The thought sent a chill through me. When sleep finally came, it was restless and filled with dreams. Luca's hands on my skin, his lips against my neck, his voice whispering possessive words in my ear. I woke with a start at dawn, my body flushed and my heart racing, angry at my subconscious betrayal. A knock at the door startled me further. I wrapped the robe tighter and called. "Yes?" Mrs. Russo's voice came through the door. "Miss Parker? Breakfast is ready whenever you'd like it, and Dr. Winters will be here at 10. "Thank you," I called back. "I'll be down shortly." In the bright light of morning, The suite seemed even more opulent than it had the previous night. The sitting room windows overlooked the gardens, now bathed in autumn sunshine that belied yesterday's storms. The grounds were vast and beautiful, the woods beyond them ablaze with fall colors. I showered and dressed in clothes that weren't mine, trying not to think about how perfectly they fit. A pair of dark jeans and a soft sweater that accommodated my still minimal baby bump comfortably. When I emerged from the bedroom, I was startled to find Luca sitting in one of the armchairs in my sitting room, reading something on his phone. He looked up when I appeared, his dark eyes moving over me appreciatively. "Good morning." "You could have knocked," I said, crossing my arms over my chest. "I did." "You were in the shower." He rose, tucking the phone into his pocket. "I came to escort you to breakfast, and to check how you slept." "Fine," I lied. I wasn't about to tell him about my dreams. He studied me for a moment, as if assessing the truth of my statement, then simply nodded. "The dining room is this way." I followed him through the maze of corridors, noting how staff members we passed lowered their eyes respectfully, some murmuring, "Good morning, Mr. Valenti." No one looked directly at me, but I felt their curiosity like a physical touch. The dining room was grand, but not imposing, with tall windows overlooking a different section of the gardens. A table that could easily seat 20 was set for 2 at one end, the place settings so far apart that conversation would require raising one's voice. Luca noted my hesitation. "Would you prefer the breakfast nook? It's more intimate." The word intimate sent an unwelcome flutter through me. "This is fine." A server appeared immediately with coffee for Luca and herbal tea for me. Another followed with plates of fresh fruit, pastries, and what looked like a perfect omelet. The efficiency was both impressive and unsettling. How did they know exactly when to appear? "Did you sleep well?" Luca asked as we began to eat. "Yes," I lied again. "The room is comfortable." "Good." He took a sip of his coffee, watching me over the rim of his cup. "Dr. Winters will be here at 10. I've had a room prepared as a proper examination space." I paused with my fork halfway to my mouth. "You have a medical room in your house?" "I have everything necessary in my house," he replied simply. "My position makes hospitals complicated." Of course. A man like Luca couldn't risk being vulnerable in a public place. I wondered how many bullets he'd taken over the years, how many wounds had been treated in that room. "After your appointment, I thought you might like a tour of the grounds," he continued. "The gardens are extensive, and there are trails through the woods if you enjoy walking. Am I allowed to walk the grounds alone?" His expression tightened slightly. "The gardens are perfectly safe. The woods—" He hesitated. "I'd prefer if you had an escort in the woods." "One of your men, you mean? Or me?" he said, his voice dropping slightly. I focused on my tea, needing to break the intensity of his gaze. "I'm sure you're too busy for walks in the woods." "I'm never too busy for you." The simple statement, delivered without embellishment, sent another unwelcome ripple of heat through me. I changed the subject. "Will you be at my appointment with Dr. Winters?" "Do you want me there?" The question caught me off guard. Until now, Luca had simply decided things for me. This was the first time he'd asked what I wanted. "No," I said after a moment. "I'd prefer privacy." He nodded, accepting my decision without argument. "As you wish. But I'd like to speak with her afterward, if that's acceptable to you." Again, asking rather than demanding. It was a small thing, but it felt significant. "That's fine," I agreed. We finished breakfast in surprisingly comfortable silence. As we rose to leave, Luca's phone rang. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. "I need to take this," he said. "Mrs. Russo will show you to the medical suite when it's time. I'll try to join you after your appointment." He stepped away to answer the call, his voice immediately shifting to a harder, colder tone than any he'd used with me. It was a stark reminder of who he really was, not just the surprisingly considerate man who asked about my comfort, but a dangerous criminal who commanded fear and respect. I spent the next hour exploring the mansion's first floor, avoiding the areas that seemed more business-oriented. The house was a study in contrasts. Warm, intimate spaces alongside grand, imposing ones. There was a library that made my heart ache with longing, floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with everything from classics to contemporary fiction. a conservatory filled with exotic plants, a music room with a grand piano that gleamed in the morning light. In each room, I noted security cameras discreetly placed in corners or behind decorative elements. The feeling of being watched was constant, though whether for my protection or my containment remained unclear. At precisely 10 o'clock, Mrs. Russo appeared to escort me to my appointment. The medical suite was in a wing I hadn't explored yet, clinical but comfortable, with state-of-the-art equipment that would make any hospital envious. Dr. Winters was an elegant woman in her 50s with a warm smile and sharp eyes. She greeted me with a professionalism that immediately put me at ease. "Miss Parker, it's lovely to meet you. I understand you're around 12 weeks pregnant?" "Yes," I confirmed, grateful for her straightforward manner. 12 weeks and 5 days, according to my last ultrasound," she nodded, gesturing for me to sit on the examination table. "And how have you been feeling? Any concerns?" For the next hour, Dr. Winters conducted the most comprehensive prenatal exam I'd ever experienced. Blood work, urine tests, detailed family history, and finally, an ultrasound that showed our baby in astonishing detail. The tiny form on the screen, with its beating heart and developing limbs, made everything suddenly, painfully real. "Everything looks perfect," she assured me, printing several images of the ultrasound. "Strong heartbeat, excellent development for 12 weeks. You're in good health, and from what I can see, this pregnancy is progressing beautifully." Tears stung my eyes as I stared at the images. My baby. Luca's baby. Our baby. The reality of it crashed over me like a wave. "Would you like a moment alone?" Dr. Winters asked gently, noting my emotional response. I nodded, unable to speak around the lump in my throat. She squeezed my shoulder gently and stepped out, leaving me to process my feelings. I wasn't sure how long I sat there, staring at the ultrasound images, but eventually a soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. I expected Dr. Winters, but instead, Luca stood in the doorway, his expression uncharacteristically uncertain. "May I come in?" he asked. I hesitated, then nodded, wiping away the last of my tears. He crossed to my side, his eyes immediately drawn to the ultrasound images in my hands. "Dr. Winters said everything looks perfect," he said softly. "You've already spoken with her?" He nodded. Briefly. His fingers reached out, hovering over but not touching the image. "May I?" I handed him one of the printouts, watching as his expression transformed. The hardness in his eyes softened, his features relaxed, and for a moment I glimpsed the man beneath the dangerous exterior, a man seeing his child for the first time. "It's so small," he murmured. "About the size of a lime," I said, finding my voice. His eyes met mine, and the vulnerability I saw there caught me off guard. "Thank you." "For what?" "For this." He gestured to the image, then to me. "For carrying my child, for being strong enough to handle all of this." I didn't know how to respond. The sincerity in his voice disarmed me more effectively than any demand or threat could have. "I didn't have much choice," I finally said, but there was less bite in the words than I intended. "We always have choices, Ellie. They're just rarely the ones we want." He handed the image back to me. "Dr. Winters says you should rest today. The tour of the grounds can wait until tomorrow." "I'm fine," I insisted, sliding off the examination table. "I'd like some fresh air, actually." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "The gardens, then. But just for a little while." The autumn air was crisp and invigorating as we stepped outside. The gardens were even more beautiful up close. Carefully tended beds of late-blooming flowers, ornamental grasses swaying in the breeze, ancient trees beginning to turn gold and crimson. We walked in silence, my arms wrapped around myself against the chill. "Are you cold?" Luca asked, noticing my posture. Before I could answer, he was shrugging out of his jacket, a casual one today, not the tailored suit from yesterday, and draping it over my shoulders. The fabric was warm from his body, enveloping me in his scent. That same sandalwood cologne that had haunted my dreams. "Thank you," I murmured, unable to reject the thoughtful gesture. We continued walking, following a gravel path that wound through sculpted hedges and around a reflecting pool where fallen leaves floated like tiny boats. "What happens after the baby is born?" I finally asked, voicing the question that had been haunting me since yesterday. Luca was quiet for a long moment. "What would you like to happen?" Again, asking instead of telling. It threw me off balance. "I don't know," I admitted. "I haven't thought that far ahead. Everything's happening so fast." "We have time," he said. "Months to figure it out. But you must have a plan. You always do." A faint smile touched his lips. "My plan is to keep you both safe. Beyond that..." He paused. "I want my child in my life, and I want you to be happy, Ellie. Those are my only certainties." The simplicity of his answer surprised me. "Even if being happy means leaving here? Leaving you?" His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "If that's what you truly want, we'll find a way to make it work. But I hope by then, you'll have seen that your place is here. With me." His words hung in the air between us. With me. Not just with our child, but with him. The implication was clear. He wanted more than just co-parenting. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it sent a confused flutter through my chest. "You don't even know me," I said, pulling his jacket tighter around my shoulders. "One night together doesn't make a relationship." "I know you better than you think," he countered, his voice gentle. "I know you're fiercely independent even when it hurts you. I know you'd sacrifice anything for the people you love. You gave up your dreams for your parents, and you'd do the same for your child." His eyes held mine. "I know you're intelligent, compassionate, stronger than you realize." I looked away, uncomfortable with his assessment. "That's not knowing me. That's observations, data points." "Then give me the chance to know you," he said, stepping closer, "and to let you know me. The real you, or the version you want me to see." Something like hurt flashed across his features. "I've never pretended to be something I'm not, Ellie. Not with you." We'd reached a stone bench beneath a massive oak tree, its branches casting dappled shadows across the ground. Luca gestured for me to sit, joining me after I did, careful to leave space between us. "My father was a monster," he said suddenly, startling me with the abrupt change in topic. "Cruel, violent, unpredictable. My mother lived in terror of him. So did I, until I was old enough to fight back." His voice was matter of fact, but I could hear old pain beneath the surface. "I swore I would never be like him. That if I ever had a family, they would never fear me." I studied his profile. The hard lines of his face softened in reflection. "Is that why you brought me here? Because you don't want your child to grow up without you? Like you did without a real father?" He nodded slowly. "Partly. But it's more than that." His eyes met mine. "The night we spent together, it wasn't just sex for me, Ellie. There was something between us. Something rare." Heat rose to my cheeks at the memory. How perfectly we'd moved together. How he'd seemed to know exactly what I needed. How safe I'd felt in his arms despite knowing what he was. The contradiction had been intoxicating. "Chemistry," I said dismissively. "Physical attraction. Is that all you felt?" The directness of his question caught me off guard. I stood, needing distance from his penetrating gaze. "It doesn't matter what I felt. We live in different worlds, Luca. Yours is..." I gestured vaguely. "All this. Power, danger, wealth. Mine is ordinary, normal. And yet here you are, in my world." He rose, moving to stand beside me. "Maybe the universe is trying to tell us something." "The universe didn't send that ultrasound," I pointed out. "I did. By mistake." A smile touched his lips. "Some might call that fate. I call it a technological error." He laughed then, a genuine sound that transformed his face. For a moment, I caught a glimpse of what he might have been in another life. Just a man, not a mafia boss. The thought made my heart ache with unexpected longing. "We should go back inside," I said, feeling suddenly vulnerable. "It's getting colder." As if on cue, a sleek black car appeared at the far end of the garden, approaching along the driveway. Luca's posture changed immediately, his body tensing as he moved slightly in front of me. "Were you expecting someone?" I asked, alarmed by his reaction. "No." His voice had turned cold, his hand moving to his side where I suspected he carried a weapon. He pulled out his phone, tapped a message, then returned it to his pocket. "Go back to the house, Ellie. Now." "What's happening?" "Just go," he insisted, his eyes never leaving the approaching vehicle. Before I could move, 2 more cars appeared, boxing in the first. Men emerged. Luca's men, I realized by their deferential postures. The tension in Luca's body eased fractionally. "It's all right," he said, though his voice remained tight. "My security has it under control." The first car's door opened, and a woman stepped out, elegant, middle-aged, with a regal bearing that commanded attention even from a distance. Luca's entire demeanor changed at the sight of her. "My mother," he said, sounding both annoyed and resigned. "Wait here." He strode across the lawn toward the woman, who stood her ground, chin raised defiantly. Even from a distance, I could see the tension in their postures as they spoke. After a brief, apparently heated exchange, both turned toward me. Luca's mother said something else, and he nodded reluctantly before walking back to where I waited. "My mother insists on meeting you," he said, his jaw tight with barely contained frustration. "I apologize in advance." Before I could respond, the woman was approaching, her expensive heels somehow navigating the gravel path with perfect ease. Up close, I could see Luca in her features. The same intense eyes, though hers were a striking green, rather than his dark brown. "So this is the girl," she said by way of greeting, her gaze moving over me assessingly. Her accent was more pronounced than Luca's, her English precise, but distinctly Italian. "Mother," Luca warned, his voice tight. She ignored him, continuing her evaluation. "Pretty enough, I suppose. A bit thin. Are you feeding her properly, Luca, Mrs. Valenti?" I said, finding my voice. "It's unexpected to meet you." A smile that didn't quite reach her eyes touched her lips. "Sophia, please. And yes, I imagine it is unexpected. My son doesn't tell me anything these days." She cast Luca a reproachful look. "I had to hear from Gianni that there was a woman living in the house, a pregnant woman." Luca's expression darkened. "Gianni talks too much. Gianni is loyal to the family," Sophia countered. "As you should be." She returned her attention to me. "So you are carrying my grandchild?" It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. "And your name?" "Ellie Parker." "Parker," she repeated, as if testing the sound of it. "Not Italian." "No," I confirmed unnecessarily. She turned to her son. "We need to talk, Luca. Privately." He shook his head. "Anything you have to say can be said in front of Ellie." Sophia's eyebrows rose slightly at that. "Very well." She straightened her already perfect posture. "The Morettis know about her. They're saying you've taken Ryan Barnes's woman, that you're breaking the code." Ice slid down my spine at her words. Luca stepped closer to me, his hand finding the small of my back in a gesture that was both protective and possessive. "Ryan Barnes is nothing," he said coldly. "He gambled with the Moretti's money and lost. He has no claim on Ellie. Nevertheless, they're using it to stir up trouble with the other families." Sophia's eyes moved to me again. "They're saying you stole her to spite them." "That's ridiculous," I interjected. "I barely knew Ryan. We dated briefly, almost a year ago." Sophia's calculating gaze settled on my stomach. "And the child is mine," Luca said before I could respond, his voice leaving no room for doubt. "Conceived months after Barnes was out of the picture." Something shifted in Sophia's expression. A slight softening around the eyes, a relaxing of her mouth. "You're certain?" "Absolutely." Luca's hand remained on my back, a warm anchor in the increasingly surreal conversation. Sophia nodded, apparently satisfied. "Then we have a situation to address." She squared her shoulders. "The child must be legitimized. You must marry." "What?" The word escaped me in a shocked gasp. "No, that's the only solution," Sophia finished firmly. "If Ellie becomes a Valenti, no one can question your right to protect her. The child will be born into the family properly. The Morettis will have no grounds for their complaints." "This isn't the 1950s, Mother," Luca said, though his voice lacked conviction. "We don't need to marry for the sake of appearances." Sophia's eyes flashed dangerously. This has nothing to do with appearances and everything to do with survival. Your father built this family on respect for tradition. If you father a child out of wedlock with a woman the Morettis are claiming has ties to them, it undermines everything we stand for. I felt as though I'd stepped into some alternate reality where powerful crime families discussed marriage and legitimacy like characters in a Victorian novel. Don't I get a say in this? Both Valentis turned to me, seeming almost surprised by my interruption. Of course you do, Luca said quickly, though his mother's expression suggested otherwise. I'm not marrying anyone, I stated firmly, especially not for politics or traditions or whatever this is. Sophia's eyes narrowed slightly. You carry a Valenti air. That comes with responsibilities. I didn't ask for any of this, I countered, anger finally breaking through my shock. I didn't ask to be brought here, to be caught in the middle of your family feuds. I certainly didn't ask to be told I have to marry a man I barely know just to satisfy some outdated code of honor. To my surprise, Sophia's expression softened fractionally. You have spirit. Good. You'll need it. She turned to her son. I like her better than the socialites you usually waste time with. Luca pinched the bridge of his nose, looking uncharacteristically at a loss. Mother, please. We'll discuss this further inside, Sophia declared, already turning toward the house. It's getting cold out here, and in her condition, Ellie shouldn't be chilled. With that, she swept away, leaving us in stunned silence. I'm sorry, Luca said once she was out of earshot. My mother is traditional. Traditional? I echoed incredulously. She just ordered us to get married like she was arranging a business merger. A reluctant smile tugged at his lips. That's Sophia Valenti. Everything is business to her, he sighed, running a hand through his hair. We don't have to do anything you don't want to do, Ellie. I promised you'd be protected here, and that includes protection from my mother's schemes. I studied his face, trying to read what lay beneath his words. But you think she's right, don't you, about the marriage? He hesitated, then nodded slowly. From a strategic standpoint, yes. It would strengthen our position against the Morettis. It would ensure the child's place in the family. His eyes held mine. But I would never force you into marriage, Ellie. Not even for those reasons. The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. Despite everything, I believed him. I need time, Luca. It's too much, too fast. You have all the time you need, he offered his arm. But we should go in. My mother isn't known for her patience. Inside, Sophia had installed herself in Luca's study like a queen holding court. Mrs. Russo was already serving her tea, looking both flustered and deferential. Sit, both of you, Sophia commanded as we entered. We have much to discuss. The next hour was surreal. Sophia Valenti outlined a plan that sounded more like a corporate merger than a marriage. Timing, announcements, a ceremony that would satisfy tradition while maintaining security. All the while, she referred to me as the mother of her grandchild, never by name, as if my identity was secondary to my function. Luca interjected occasionally, pushing back against his mother's more outlandish demands, but it was clear this was a battle he'd fought before and rarely won. I remained largely silent, watching the power dynamics play out between mother and son. Enough, mother, Luca finally said, his patience visibly wearing thin. Ellie and I will discuss this privately. Whatever decision we make will be ours alone. Sophia raised an elegant eyebrow. The family council meets next week. They'll expect an announcement. They'll get one when we're ready to give it, he countered firmly. Now, it's been a long day, and Ellie needs rest. It was a dismissal, and Sophia recognized it as such. She rose with dignity, smoothing her already immaculate dress. Very well, but don't wait too long, Luca. The Morettis certainly won't. After she left, escorted by Mrs. Russo, a heavy silence fell over the study. Luca poured himself a drink, whiskey by the amber color, and offered me water, which I accepted gratefully. Your mother is formidable, I said, breaking the silence. A wry smile touched his lips. That's the kindest description she's ever received. He took a sip of his drink. She's also usually right, which is the most infuriating thing about her. I set my water down, gathering my courage. "Luca, I can't marry you. Not like this. Not under these circumstances." He nodded, unsurprised. "I know. But you want me to." He considered his answer carefully. "I want you safe. I want our child protected. Marriage would accomplish both." He set his glass down, moving to sit beside me on the sofa. "But more than that, I want you to choose me, Ellie. Not because of the baby, not because of the Morettis, but because you want me the way I want you." The raw honesty in his voice made my heart race. And how is that? His eyes captured mine, intense and unwavering, completely. Exclusively. For the rest of our lives. My breath caught in my throat. "You can't possibly know that. We barely know each other. Some things you just know." He reached out, his fingers lightly brushing a strand of hair from my face. "The night we spent together, I knew you were different. Special. When I found out about the baby, I knew it was meant to be." "That's not rational," I whispered. A smile touched his lips. "Love rarely is. Love." The word hung in the air between us, dangerous and tempting. "Give us a chance, Ellie," he said softly. "Not marriage, not yet. But a chance to see if what I feel for you, what I think you feel for me too, is real." I should have said no, should have maintained the walls I'd built around myself. But something in his eyes, vulnerability beneath the strength, longing beneath the control, broke through my defenses. "One day at a time," I said finally. "That's all I can offer." Relief and something like joy transformed his face. "That's all I'm asking for." He leaned forward slowly, giving me time to pull away. I didn't. His lips met mine in a kiss that was gentle yet possessive, a promise and a claim all at once. My body responded instantly, remembering the night we'd shared, craving more despite my better judgment. When we parted, his forehead rested against mine. "One day at a time," he repeated, his voice husky. In that moment, with his warmth surrounding me and our child growing between us, I allowed myself to imagine a future I'd never expected, one where this dangerous, complex man became my sanctuary, rather than my cage. It wouldn't be easy. There would be battles ahead, with the Morettis, with his mother, with the expectations of his world. But as Luca's arms encircled me, drawing me against his chest where I could hear the steady beat of his heart, I realized something important. I wasn't alone anymore. For better or worse, Luca Valenti had claimed me as his own. And deep down, in a place I wasn't quite ready to acknowledge, I'd begun to claim him too. "One day at a time," I whispered against his chest, feeling his arms tighten around me in response. It was both a concession and a promise, the beginning of something I couldn't yet name, but could no longer deny. Whatever came next, we would face it together. Mother and father, man and woman, protector and protected, and perhaps someday, husband and wife, not because tradition demanded it, or danger necessitated it, but because our hearts, against all odds and reason, had chosen each other. As the sun set over the estate, casting long shadows across the grounds, I remained in Luca's embrace. No longer his captive, but not quite free either, bound by something stronger than fear, more enduring than obligation. It had begun with a mistaken message, a careless tap on a screen. But perhaps, as Luca had suggested, it wasn't a mistake at all. Perhaps it was exactly what was meant to be.